While listening to this story, you're going to hear different strategies that we can use to figure out how many seeds are in our pumpkin. When you hear those strategies, I want you to remember them so we can talk about it after the story.
How many seeds in a pumpkin? By Margaret McNamara, illustrated by G. Brian Carus. Charlie liked school. He liked his teacher, Mr. Tiffin. He liked his best friend, Alex. But he did not like lining up to go into school. Mr. Tiffin's class lined up by size, tallest to smallest or smallest to tallest. Charlie was the smallest in the class every time. One chilly fall morning, Charlie was surprised to see 3 bright orange pumpkins on Mr. Tiffin's desk. One pumpkin was big, one was medium, and one was small. "How many seeds in a pumpkin?" Mr. Tiffin asked the class. "Does anybody know?" Nobody knew, but everybody had ideas. "The biggest one has the most," said Robert. "I bet it has 1,000,000 seeds." Robert was the tallest boy in the class. "The medium one has 500, Eleanor said. Eleanor always sounded as if she knew exactly what she was talking about. "The tiny one has 22, said Anna. Anna liked even numbers better than odd ones. Mr. Tiffin wrote down all the guesses on the blackboard. Charlie was very quiet. "What are you thinking, Charlie?" asked Mr. Tiffin. "I'm thinking that all the best guesses are taken," Charlie said. "Why don't we open those pumpkins and see?" said Mr. Tiffin. The next day, the kids in Mr. Tiffin's class brought in spoons for scooping, and bowls for holding, and plastic bags for throwing out. They covered the floor with newspaper. They put on their smocks. "It's a messy business, counting pumpkin seeds," said Mr. Tiffin, but the class was ready. After Mr. Tiffin cut a circle around each pumpkin stem, Kimmy, Alex, and Jake pulled off the caps. The children peered inside. "This big one definitely has the most," said Robert. "We'll see," said Mr. Tiffin. The pumpkin pulp was slimy and stringy, and the seeds were hard to get out. When the children were finished, there were 3 empty pumpkins. 1, 2, 3. 3 full bowls. 1, 2, 3. And 20 messy hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. "Tomorrow we will find out the answer to our question," said Mr. Tiffin. "Tonight your homework is to think about how we should count all the seeds." That afternoon, Mr. Tiffin dried the seeds. The next day he put them in 3 paper bags marked big, medium, and small. Big, medium, small. "Did you do your thinking homework?" he asked the class. "Yes," Alex said. "I think we should just guess." "I think we should count very, very carefully," said Tara. "I think we should count by 2s, 5s, and 10s, said Molly. The class agreed that Molly had a good idea. Robert, Kimmy, and Jake all wanted to count the seeds in the big pumpkin by 2s. Anna asked if she could join them. "We could be the 2s club," she said. They practiced counting. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, they said together. Jeremy, Tara, Eleanor, Molly, and Alex like counting by 5s. "We'll count the seeds in the medium pumpkin," said Molly. "We can be the 5s club." 5, 10, 15, 20, they cheered. "I'll take the smallest pumpkin," said Charlie. "I guess I'll be in the 10s club." "Good idea," said Mr. Tiffin. 10, 20, 30, Charlie began. Soon there were many groups of seeds in front of each pumpkin. The Two's Club. See, said Robert, the Two's Club has the most. They had 170 pairs of seeds. The Fives Club. We have lots too, said Eleanor. They had 63 groups of 5 seeds and 1 seed left over. The Tens Club. Charlie had exactly 35 groups of 10 seeds. Robert looked at the seeds in front of Charlie. You don't have a whole lot, he said. Let's get counting, said Mr. Tiffin. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, began Robert, Kimmy, Jake, and Anna. It took a long time to count 170 pairs of seeds. My brain hurts, said Anna. The biggest pumpkin had 340 seeds. Almost a million, said Jake. The fives were a little easier. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, chanted Jeremy, Tara, Eleanor, and Molly. There were 316 seeds in the medium pumpkin. Too bad for you, said Robert. It's not a contest, said Molly. The tens group were the fastest of all, since there were just 35 groups. 10, 20, 30, 40. Charlie counted to himself. This can't be right, he said. What can't be right? Asked Mr. Tiffin. There are 350 seeds in my little pumpkin, said Charlie. That means it had the most of all. So it does, said Mr. Tiffin. Congratulations, Charlie, said Alice. The Tens Club wins. It's not a contest, said Robert. Mr. Tiffin told the class to gather round. You can never tell just how many seeds are in a pumpkin until you open it up, he said. But there may be some clues. Take a good look at these. The class did. Charlie's is darker orange, said Anna. And it has a lot more lines on the outside, said Robert. Yep, said Mr. Tiffin. For each line on the outside, there is a row of seeds on the inside. That's good to know, said Eleanor. And the longer the pumpkin grows, the more lines it gets, he said. The skin gets darker, too. So even though my pumpkin was the smallest, it was on the vine the longest, said Charlie. Exactly, agreed Mr. Tiffin. When it was time to go home, the class lined up by the door. Smallest to tallest this time, said Mr. Tiffin. Robert was at the back. Eleanor was in the middle. Charlie was at the front. Small things can have a lot going on inside them, Charlie said to Mr. Tiffin. And then they left the classroom with Charlie leading the way. Charlie's Pumpkin Facts. Pumpkin seeds are small but powerful. A huge pumpkin grows from a tiny seed. You can eat pumpkin seeds if you want, but you should ask somebody to roast them first. They contain lots of vitamin A. If you plant pumpkin seeds, do it after the ground warms up in the spring. You'll need a lot of space for them to grow. Pumpkins grow on vines. It takes about 4 months for a pumpkin to grow full size, so plant your seeds by June if you want a pumpkin for Halloween. Is the pumpkin a vegetable? No, it's a fruit. Some pumpkins are small. I like those. Some pumpkins are really, really big. Usually big pumpkins don't taste very good. Small, sweet pumpkins are the kind you should use to make a pumpkin pie. Counting by 2s and 5s and 10s make counting go faster. That's not really a pumpkin fact, but it's true.
Estimating, making a thoughtful guess. Today, we are going to estimate or guess how many seeds we think are in our pumpkin so that tomorrow we can open it up and count our seeds. Throughout the story, we learned 2 strategies that will help us estimate how many seeds we think are on the inside of our pumpkin. The first strategy we heard was that the more lines on the outside, the more seeds on the inside of the pumpkin. Each line on the outside of the pumpkin means that there's a strand of seeds right on the inside of that line. Let's count our lines on the outside of our pumpkin to decide if we think there's a lot of lines or maybe not as much as we thought. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. And then I'm back where I started. So there are 36 lines on the outside of our pumpkin. That's a lot of lines. So do you think that there are going to be a lot of seeds on the inside or not as much? The second strategy we learned in the story that's going to help us estimate how many seeds are in our pumpkin is that smaller pumpkins have more seeds on the inside than larger pumpkins do. Let's look at our pumpkin and decide if we think our pumpkin is on the smaller side or if it's a little bit on the larger side. Do you think this is a small pumpkin? Let me show you another pumpkin that I have. This is an itty bitty pumpkin. It's painted, but you can see the size compared to our other pumpkin that we've been working with. We can see that this pumpkin is much bigger than this pumpkin. So I'm thinking, maybe this pumpkin will have more seeds even though it's a lot smaller. I don't know, what do you think? Next, I want you to think about if you have ever seen a pumpkin that's bigger than this one. This week, we have been working with our one pumpkin to observe it in so many different ways. We have measured the height, we have measured the weight, we have measured the circumference, and today we learned how we can estimate how many seeds we think are inside of our pumpkin before we even open it up and count the seeds. Our story today shared different strategies that we can use to make an estimate of how many seeds we think are inside. So today, I want you to choose one strategy that you learned in our story to come up with a number. How many seeds do you think are in our pumpkin? Make a creation to show us that number that you estimate, and I want you to upload it to Schoology. Tomorrow, we get to open up our pumpkin and finally see how many seeds are inside of it. I can't wait to see what you post.